I remember my therapist ended up telling me, Baba, you should just sit down right now. We should talk about this. And instead of sitting across from me, she sat beside me and she put her hand on my thigh and things got insane. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Baba and welcome back to another really embarrassing, but I gotta say extreme story. So this story all takes place back when I was in grade 12, or actually 3 months after I graduated grade 12. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm gonna confess the truth here. I had major anger issues. I'm not gonna lie, to this day, I feel like I still have some anger issues here and there, but honestly, I've learned to detain it down and basically calm down, I guess. And I guess one of the ways I do that is by telling these really embarrassing stories about my life. But I remember basically back when I was in grade 12 or just graduating, like I said earlier, I had major anger to the point where the way I would kind of release my anger was doing the Devil's Tango with other women. It wasn't to the point where I would do the Devil's Tango for my own satisfaction. It got to the point where I would do it just so I could let my anger out. And obviously that leads to a lot of dark stuff. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I made a video on the channel about it, but I will say this, it really made me not proud of who I was as a person, especially after high school. Because obviously after high school, when you graduate, things start to change. Life really starts hitting you in a different way and things get more serious in life. But I remember around this time, my parents really started to notice that I started getting angry more easily, and basically that led to them actually one time walking up to me in my bedroom saying, Baba, do you think maybe it's good for you to get a therapist? Just, you know, to release yourself? What? Mom, no, I don't want to take therapy. Therapy's dumb. Now, if you guys did not know and already realized, back when I was younger, or even still actually nowadays, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't believe therapy is real. I don't believe therapy is actually something that is useful or helpful or actually even worth putting your money into. Obviously, I don't know, many people like therapy, but for me, I was never a fan of it, because who wants to sit there just talking to a random stranger about all your issues? Like, you could do that with literally anyone. And the advice they give back is just another question that you have to deal with and make you, I guess, go to a realization. But obviously at this time, I believe therapy wasn't for me, and it still isn't. But going on with the story, I remember my mom was really convinced, and one thing led to another. She ended up opening her laptop in front of me and she started opening up different therapy clinics to basically send me to. And me, I like basically didn't want to go because I already felt like in my mind I already had an escape to basically releasing my anger, which was me doing the Devil's Tango. But obviously I didn't want to tell my mom that. So I remember it got to the point where basically she ended up telling me, okay, Baba, I booked you an appointment for this therapy. Just try it out. Just see if you enjoy it. Please, Baba. Okay, Mom, I'll do it, is what I told her. And the next day came around and me and my mom, we drove over down to this therapy clinic. Now, when we got to the place, I remember I ended up sitting down just in the waiting room when my mom went to go check me in. And I was just kind of sitting there looking at all the signs that basically, you know, have like motivational speeches on it. But me, obviously, I hated them. I ended up just looking down and I ended up going on my phone, actually playing Clash of Clans. And I remember 20 minutes went by and out of nowhere, I ended up seeing this really, really hot lady that was wearing a really tight skirt walk up to me and say, oh, you must be Baba. I remember I ended up looking up to see who I was talking to, and out of nowhere, I am not joking, my jaw dropped and my eyes went wide. Like, I was mesmerized and aroused by how this girl looked. Like, she looked amazing because she was so hot. And on top of that, her cherries were literally popping out of her button-up shirt. Like, I was mind blown and I was so attracted to her. And I looked at her saying, yeah, that's me. What's up? She ended up looking at me smiling and she said, well, I'm ready for you in my office now. Okay, cool. And me and her, we ended up going to the office and we ended up basically sitting across from each other. And she basically told me to start talking about myself. So that's exactly what I did. I told her I was a gamer. I told her that, you know, I would do the Devil's Tango a lot with many different types of women, and how I had goals and dreams of becoming, well, a professional gamer of some sorts, or, you know, just anything really. I don't know. At this time, right after I graduated, I won't lie to you, I didn't really know where I was going with life, like I said earlier. So obviously I was just trying to basically tell her like the basic lines of myself, of who I am and what I want to be. But as I was saying all this, one thing I found really weird about this therapist was that randomly at certain moments, she'd be like, oh, like, I don't know, you could be a model. Like, are you sure you want to be like a gamer? Oh, so like, do you ever see yourself, I don't know, maybe like being on the Devil's Hub from how much of the Devil's Tango you do? And she would ask me all these questions that sounded like good normal questions to ask a normal person, but at the same time, the way she would say them is like in a flirtatious way. It got to the point where, I'm not gonna lie to you, I ended up just kind of zoning out every time she talked, because I ended up looking at her cherries instead, because, well, it was either that or I look at the sign behind her that was of a cat saying something motivational. So I ended up just staring at her cherries, and honestly 100% that this therapist definitely noticed that I was doing that. And she looked at me and said, Baba, you do realize my eyes are up here, right? Yeah, sorry, no, I'm just zoned out, I guess. I guess you could say it's from me doing the Devil's Tango. And at that moment, I guess she looked at me and said, Baba, what makes you angry? Now, obviously, there was a lot of answers to this question, but one thing I did end up saying was, oh, you know, I guess like people like really like pushing my buttons, I guess, and just like, you know, being rude about it. Because at the time, I'm not gonna lie, every time she like would say something, it sounded like she was trying to press my buttons more than actually, you know, be a therapist. I remember it got to a point where a therapy session was over because her phone ended up ringing, and yeah, one thing led to another. That was the end of our first session together. Now, obviously, I ended up getting up and leaving, but as I was leaving out the front door, I remember she put her hand on my shoulder and said, I really hope you come back. And she walked away. Now, I'm not gonna lie, at this moment, I got bricked. I'm not gonna lie. I was severely bricked, and I was really just attracted to this therapist. And I remember as I was on the way home with my mother, my mom looks at me and says, so Baba, what do you think about the session? Do you think you're gonna go again? Oh, I'm definitely going back, is what I told my mom, and my mom ended up smiling. I remember 1 week went by and I ended up going back to see this therapist. And when I went to go see her, I remember I got really excited and I decided to wear something more, I guess, appealing to the average woman. And basically, I ended up heading down there. When I got there, I ended up sitting in the waiting room waiting for her. I saw that she was already with a different client, but I could just tell from the way she was interacting with this other person, she didn't feel the same as what she did with me. Like, for example, she wasn't in any way, you know, flirtatious. She wasn't touchy. She didn't really, like, you know, stare at him like the way she would look at me. So I knew there was definitely a difference between me and other clients that she had. And I remember when she saw me at the waiting room, she ended up running up to me, surprisingly, and actually giving me a hug and say, hey, Baba, I missed you. Welcome back. Do you want to head into the office right now? Yeah, I guess it's my time, isn't it? Oh, yeah, of course it's your time, silly. And I remember this therapist ended up grabbing my wrist and actually dragging me to her office and shutting the door and locking it. Now, the first time I met this therapist, she didn't lock the door, but this time she apparently did for some reason, which got me really questioning what was going to go on here. I remember this therapist looks at me and tells me, Baba, you should sit down. Okay, yeah. So tell me, how has your week been? Have you been releasing anger recently? And I already knew what she meant by this question because, like I said earlier, the way I would release anger was me doing the Devil's Tango. But I ended up being honest with her saying, no, I haven't done it at all, to be honest, is what I told her. And she said, oh, well, like, maybe I should help you out with that. I remember this therapist ended up taking off everything right in front of me. And she said, do you like it, Baba? And well, one thing led to another. This therapist got me bricked and we ended up doing the Devil's Tango at the therapy office. Now, I don't know if this was part of the therapy, but to be honest, in my mind, it probably wasn't. Maybe this therapist was just in the mood and, you know, she found the best person that could do it with her, and that was me because I was the master of doing the Devil's Tango. But one thing I will say was that my mind was blown when this was happening. I remember we were in there for a good like hour and a half and her phone alarm went off and basically she had to get ready as fast as possible for her next client. After she put everything on, she ended up walking me out of her office and said, I hope that released your anger for this session, and ended up basically letting me go. At that moment, I'm not gonna lie to you, I guess the therapy ended up becoming release anger therapy. I have really no idea what that was, but I remember from weeks on end for I want to say a month and a half, that's the only thing we would do every time I went to her office. I would go there, do the Devil's Tango, and basically come back home. But then I'm not gonna lie to you, months later on, I ended up stopped seeing this therapist because, well, I ended up getting a girlfriend and I decided to stay loyal to her and basically cut off the therapist. Even though my girlfriend knew I was going to therapy, she found it hilarious how I ended up just stopping going to therapy for her. But I just told her I graduated therapy because, well, I was already the master of doing the Devil's Tango. Anyways, but the real question is, would you guys do your therapist? And if you would, then just follow for more embarrassing stories. Peace out, guys.